Happy New Year! Yes, it's the first time I'm seeing you this year. Probably the first time you're seeing me as well. Amaya Makinde, good morning and welcome.
Yes, indeed. A very happy and prosperous New Year to you. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Well, countless things will definitely hold attention. One thing that everyone is looking forward to is this. Drum roll. 2023 elections.
And you know what I noted? Our type of celebration here is a departure from, the high points of celebrations across the globe. Every year, we capture that moment of transition, and we see global citizens celebrating with fireworks, with selfies, with hugs, but in Nigeria, more often than not, we're celebrating, in church with prayers and, cries to God for a better new year. But in those countries where they celebrate with fireworks, and selfies and all of that, there's more development, there's more stability, there's more peace. And we can just mention a few of those countries, but needless to say that that's a marked difference in, the type of celebration and the reality that's on ground in those countries of the world and in Nigeria. But we have prayed, Nigerians have prayed, and we're hopeful for a better 2023, especially when we make the right choices, not just in choices of, leadership as we go to the polls, but in choices of conduct or personal decisions. The Chief of Defense Staff was saying just, a day ago that Nigerians' official lingua franca should be love. It shouldn't be, the different languages we speak, it should be love. And that should be our watchword in 2023.
Well, first of all, I'm going to protest on behalf of all the people who witnessed the transition into the midnight of 2020 into 2023, the crossover into 2023 with fireworks. There's always that celebration in Lagos, somewhere on the island. And then there are churches as well that they have their own fire. After all the praying, as soon as the minister declares Happy New Year, fireworks is ringing outside. So that's something that happens. So after all the praying and expectations and everything, I also believe that everywhere in the world, there's usually that transition. The Pope, would have had his say, and many other, churches or, mosques, if I dare say, all over the world would also have that, kind of celebration, ushering themselves and hoping. Well, that's for those who use the Gregorian calendar anyway, who have that festivity all over the place. And so, yes, I'm protesting on the behalf of all those people who burnt what we call knockout when I was growing up, But,
what we call banga when we're growing up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, what you guys call banga. And along, whatever that means. Anyway, so, but you see, speaking to the issue of, okay, right, that is it. That's, see, I told you, this is Nigeria. Come on, Bukola, you owe us an apology.
Yeah.
That's fireworks, right? And it's happened right here in Nigeria. Come on. And I'm pretty sure it's not only in Lagos.
No, well, not necessarily. The predominant culture is, celebrations, crossover in churches.
Yes.
Perhaps
we
in
also
mosques,
still crossover
with the exception of the traditional worshippers.
Yes, we also still crossover with knockouts.
Okay, if you insist.
And the fireworks and all of that, And, even though, what you're saying is quite significant, because there are countries in the world where they actually have monuments for that, okay? There's a countdown that everyone is following: 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and then
0.
have a Happy New Year, and then the fireworks. Sometimes some of those fireworks are on buildings and everything like that, and it's only marking something, a new start. I don't even know, where did that start anyway, that we have to explode into the new year? Well, that's a subject matter for.
We'll have to go and do a search on that.
But to the issue that you spoke about, the issue of love that you spoke to, it is very, 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 very important. If we, for instance, at these fireworks, all of the barriers are broken. No Christian, no Muslim, no Hausa, no Igbo, no Tiv, no Kanuri, no Fulani. All barriers are broken down. We all come together for one thing. We want to usher in the new year. We all agree on that. When we go to the mosque or to the church, all ethnic barriers are demolished. We all worship together. Gone are those days in Orthodox system where men and women sit apart. Today, all of those barriers are broken. So why don't we also do ourselves a favor and break down all those barriers entirely in every aspect and sphere of our lives? It's only in politics that you find those barriers monumental or really those thick divides. It's only in politics that those things happen, or when it concerns politics essentially, not even governance, because you will often hear politicians say there are no permanent enemies, no permanent friends, only permanent interests. What does that tell you? Does that also mean that there are no permanent alignments when it comes to religion or ethnic differences or anything? So from my understanding of love, love is not just a word. It's not just an emotion. It's a series of action. And it starts, exactly. For me, it's a series of action. It's, first of all, patient. Are you patient with everyone? Second one for me, it is kind. How kind are you? Generally, Nigerians love each other. I mean, go all over the nation, you find someone hungry. The natural thing, and the natural thing you want to do is show love, show empathy. Those things are there, part of our systems.
Yeah.
So at what point do the divides come? It's at the leadership level. And you also remember our conversation yesterday week with on Monday, actually, with the two leadership consultants that we have. I said, if we're looking to elect anyone in 2023, the most important item the person must have and express is love. So the number one quality of the leader we must engage, or leaders we must engage, is the quality of love. And I think that's what the clerics were speaking to. The question then is, how do you, as a Nigerian, determine who that is? That's the decision that we have to make as we build on to the elections. Good morning, Markwe.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning to you, Buki. Happy New Year to you guys. I could swear that Buki was a fly on the wall in the conversation I was having with a friend just last night. You know, in terms of the different ways we celebrate New Year across the world, because that's essentially what we're talking about. I had a different take on it, though, in terms of our upbringing. I do not know when this really became a thing, you know, where people must cross over in churches, or where it became so big that you now have, you know, like let's say, a gathering of churches, or I don't know, a gathering of people who must pray their way into the new year. I don't know when it became a thing, but as far as I can remember, I mean, all of the time, all the years I have grown up, my family has always been very religious, and we've always spent it in churches. I mean, Christmas, you're in church, in church, New Year's Eve, you're in church on Christmas. What am I saying? You're in church Christmas Eve, you're in church Christmas Day, you're in church on Boxing Day, you're in church New Year's Eve, you're in church New Year's Day. And if the following day there is another day for you to be in church, you will be in church. So assuming New Year's Day were a Saturday, for instance, and you know you had to be in church on Sunday, you will be in church all of those 3 days. It's just how it is. That's how I grew up. And I was just telling a friend how, you know, that tradition is something, that mentality is something that most likely will remain with me. And how I'll find it to be very difficult for me to change. So even where you find situations, maybe, you know, governments have started putting things together, like we saw in Lagos, where the Lagos state government had a countdown. I would rarely see myself, you know, changing my tradition of, you know, maybe going to church to go and watch a countdown. I ask myself, if I lived abroad, would I go to church, or would I go to go and watch a countdown? I don't know. That will continue to be something, I mean, it's a conversation education I will have. But maybe the children I will have, maybe it might not be so for my children, depending on what it is that I decide to introduce them to. Maybe their mindset will change. But sincerely speaking, I sincerely hope that the prayers that we say, the things that we ask God for, will not continue to be same year in, year out. I hope that the things that we, go to church to ask for will be more about our personal, spiritual growth. It'll be more about, yes, of course, we'll always pray for our country, but we should not be praying for things like electricity. Oh, God, let there be good electricity. Oh, God, let there be good roads. No, those are not the kind of things that we should be praying for. We'll continue to hope and pray. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people would have incorporated it in their prayers for leaders, good leaders, because even if you have a good leader one time, another leader can come and destroy everything that a good leader has put in place. So, of course, prayer for leaders should constantly be should constantly be one of our topmost things. But, maybe that tradition also is something that has to do with Africa. I mean, Africans generally have always been thought to be more spiritual in their inclinations, than their, will I say, other counterparts across the world. We generally, I mean, starting from our African traditional religions to, other religions that we have now imbibed, Islam, Christianity, etc. Those things, found deeper roots here, and we've taken it to a whole new level. If you look at how our religion is practiced vis-a-vis how others practice theirs, you have to ask, or you have to say that we certainly practice ours in a very different way. And, well, you can also add to the fact that, there is a bigger need when you look around us, a bigger need to pray. People pray for security, of course, and people are more grateful when you see situations where others have lost their lives and you are still here. I sincerely hope that regardless of how people feel, these are the kinds of things that will continue to fill their heart. A sense of gratitude, a sense of the fact that when there's life, there's still hope, that there's a lot to hope for, there's a lot to work for, that this country still has the potential to be great, and that we all have a role in, helping to fulfill that role. So maybe part of what we should add as our prayer point is that, God helps us to fulfill the potential that we have to contribute our quota into the development and the greatness of our country. So I guess on that note, I don't know if you guys can hear me. Can you still hear me? Buki,
we can hear you. We can hear you, Markwe. Just to perhaps by way of adding some form of oomph to what you said, we have a national pledge. And I wish we would all add it to our personal dedication to our nation every day. I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, to defend her unity and uphold her honor and glory. So help me God. That same God you pray for prosperity in your nation. So if we added that, and believe it, because sometimes you pray and you don't believe. But hey, these things do happen. All right, let's see if we can look at a few papers this morning and see what they're saying.
Yeah, well, as we start the newspaper review segment this morning, there's something former president wants Nigerians to reflect on. Of course, it's going to form part of our conversation, but that's what this Nigeria chooses to lead with. And, it extracts a quote from the missive former President Obasanjo wrote to Nigerians, which I'm going to read for you right after reading the caption. Why I endorse Obi for president by Obasanjo. Here's a quote. He's a needle with thread attached to it from north, south, and may not get lost. Former president. That's ascribed to former president. And then we have this one. Tinubu, we pity LP candidate for relying on ex-president who can't win home state. His opinion doesn't reflect the views of Nigerians. That's ascribed to the PDP. How true is that? What's your reaction to this? Let's know in your comments later on. Let's take a look at some other stories. This one provides some form of reassurance, but we hope it will be backed up by action, especially next month. 2023 polls, your votes will count. Buhari reassures Nigerians. That's a page 12 read inside this Nigeria. So all security agents, the commission, the electoral umpire must rise to the occasion. And take a look at this one. Also, beneath that one, Ikpeazu, that's the governor of Abia State, shuts Apostolic Church over leadership crisis. Well, interesting way to start the year, but it's a page 10 read. If you're interested in that story, you get details there.
Sometimes I find it very interesting. I saw a video of two clerics fighting in front of the auditorium before their congregants, and I'm wondering, is that a religious place or a
Which
shrine?
part of doctrine do they find that in?
I was numb. All of my theology was discombobulated.
Thrown to the winds. Well, we all know good example.
And they weren't acting.
When we see one.
Yeah, they weren't acting. They were actually opposing each other. I'm like, in what area does this make sense?
Okay, let's look at other stories from the front page of this Nigeria this morning. This one at the bottom strip, Serap sues oil-producing states, governors over failure to account for 625 billion naira derivation funds. That's an interesting story this morning, can tie to many happenings, you know, in the year 2022, where governors were held account, were called to account on derivation funds, not just derivation funds, ecological funds, and, to which a number of governors responded that they are above board and they can go check the records. They have judiciously spent, all of these funds. But we'll find time, to look sufficiently at this and others. Lastly, before we exit this Nigeria, tough year. This one is above the nameplate. Tough year for global economy. IMF boss warns. By the way, Nigeria defied all IMF predictions in the year 2022 with inflation hitting the rooftop at 21%, ending the year at 21% last year. So who knows what this year holds if IMF is predicting another tough year.
For me, whenever we say we were in a recession and then we are set to come out of recession, by what percentage were we, at what percentage were we operating before we went on recession? It only reminds me of Segun Odegbami, because when he was playing, he would play on the touchline from wherever to wherever. He always played. So it seemed like we were always on the touchline of recession anyway. 2.1, 1 point something, and we enter into recession and we come out again and we're still on the fringes. When are we going to get so way over it that gratifying what government is doing, no doubt about it, but this is not just something for the government of the day. It is something that's been subsisting for many, many years. When will we resume production? What did we do? I'm sorry, I have to go back there. What did we do in the First Republic, where the major regions were competing against each other, healthily competing against each other economically? What did we do at that time? We call a building Cocoa House in Ibadan. It is not called Cocoa House because they sell cocoa there. It is called Cocoa House because what was used to build it was from proceeds from cocoa. So that was then.
And we had the groundnut pyramids.
What happened to the groundnut pyramids? The 50 naira notes. I don't know if it's still. I don't remember the last time.
Cattle paddocks, even in the southwest.
Exactly. Even in the north, I could go on and on about all these things. So what did we do in those productive years that we stopped doing? What's wrong with going back there? My people say in the southwest of Nigeria, if you can't go forward, can you at least go back and know where you are coming from and chart your path back there?
Are your questions for all candidates vying for elective posts next month? Questions for them to reflect.
Especially the governors.
And answer in 2023.
Especially the governors.
Yeah, let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
Flip to the leadership newspaper this morning, and it's pretty much some kind of advisory you'll find on the front page of the paper, and that's it right there. Don't be fooled again. Vote Obi. OBJ tells Nigerians. Well, if that is not campaigning, I don't know what it is. It's all about the 2023 presidency. And look at the right that says, leadership beyond Emilio claim. Obasanjo has history of failed endorsements, according to Tinubu. It's ex-president's personal opinion, says PDP. Atiku reaches out to 11 APC governors. All of that story you'll find on page 4. Of course, away from all of that, you'll find fun seekers playing at the Magic Land Park in Abuja yesterday. And it's all fun and fun and fun. Well, Malcolm may want to tell us a little more about that later. NNPCL, security agencies destroy barge filling station storing stolen crude. Whoa. Did we also destroy the forensic evidence that could have helped in tracking the thieves? Because it says stolen crude. Who stole it? From where was it stolen? All those usual questions. Well, all of that you'll find right there on the inside pages.
You know, last year too, a vessel was destroyed, and you know, for which the senior advocate of Nigeria questioned particularly the rules of engagement, and in fact quoted a section of the law that runs foul of. On the 2nd of January 2023, we're back here with the same conversation.
That's it for leadership newspaper, honestly. Okay.
Well, I'm taking a look at Daily Trust for you this morning. Whilst I don't know, there's a way leadership couched this. It's in sharp contrast to what Daily Trust has on the front page, but it's still about the same story. Atiku Tinubu kick as Obasanjo backs Obi as a lead story. It's a worthless endorsement. It's from APC campaign. Only the endorsement of Nigerians matter to us. That's from the PDP. Why I backed Obi against Atiku Tinubu, that's coming from ex-president, says Nigeria hell on earth under Buhari. Page 5 is where you'll get details. I was reading the president's statement. It says something to the effect that he's taken criticism and accolades in equal measure, knowing that he is giving his best. So, Mr. President, you might want to take a second look at this statement from former President Obasanjo. Page 5 is where you'll find details. Look at this at the bottom. Uncertainty dogs PDP as presidential poll gathers steam. It's a page 11 read. You also see the pictures there, I mean, of people, not just your children now, because I also see that there are some adults here who are reliving their childhood again on the front pages. I mean, the picture that's on the front page of Daily Trust, and it's good to see that this was taken here in the city. Oftentimes when you see pictures of amusement parks, most times they are taken in Lagos, but the pictures we see right here on the front page are pictures taken here at a very popular amusement park here in the FCT, which comes alive usually during festive seasons. Look at this. Fuel subsidy favors the rich more than the poor. That's from Tinubu. Well, when you read the president's statement, talking about how they have, tried to ensure that there is a buffer in terms of energy prices, and the Nigerians do not feel the inflationary pressure much, especially when it comes to energy. And you see this, fuel subsidy favors the rich more than the poor, then you know that there is really not a convergence of opinion on, what subsidy should be, especially on a commodity like petrol, how it should be. Even within a party like the APC, there's still divergent opinion. So page 27 might provide maybe a little more insight into maybe there's any point of convergence, but looking at the stance that the president has maintained so far, and looking at the stance that the presidential candidate of his party, maintains, it doesn't look like there is a clear, coherent response or answer to what should happen to energy costs, within the APC. I may be wrong, but that's my own reading. When you read a headline such as "Fuel Subsidy Favors the Rich More Than the Poor." Look at this. Social media users unsure CBN cash withdrawal limit will curb vote buying. So maybe there's been a poll now. You can easily conduct a quick poll on Twitter. Do you think CBN cash withdrawal limits will curb vote buying? And, responses could easily be yes or no. And there you have a story. Social media users unsure CBN cash withdrawal limit will curb vote buying. You might want to see details on page 4, because oftentimes after those polls have been conducted, at least Twitter allows respondents give their reasons why they say yes or why they also say no. So that might be an interesting read for those who are hoping that this will be something, this not just the cash withdrawal limit, but the new currency will be something that will help curb vote buying even as we go into the polls this year. And look at this new year. Governors promise better deliveries, preach peace. Well, we'll believe them when we see the work. Taste of the pudding will be in the eating. So let us wait and then see how they perform this year. We'll leave it there for Daily Trust newspapers.
From Daily Trust, let's flip to the Nigerian News Direct, and this shows a different path completely from Daily Trust and Leadership. It chooses to highlight, who their man of the year is. But away from that, let's look at some other stories that bother on, the society. Beneath that man of the year caption, we have a number of stories. NDLEA arrests suspected tramadol dealer, recovers 1,140 capsules. Well, the MDLEA made quite some gains in the fight against the use of illicit substances and the smuggling of it. And here, this is yet another, high point of their activities. Let's hope that the successes continue, as it has a lot to do on the youths in the society, and their ability to function and make themselves relevant and contribute their own quota to the society. Beneath that, we also have this one: 2022 political space versus the thrust of 2023 general election. I believe that's a commentary, and you find that on page 9. Let's go above the nameplate now as we see some more stories. After one calendar year, basic secondary education still in shambles. Last year, we had a record increase in the number of out-of-school children in Nigeria's north. What will those vying for elected offices be doing about that this year? What are they going to do about elementary education? What are they going to do about education, continuing education in IDP camps? There are a number of children in those IDP camps who are not going to school. These are very, very important points to reflect on as we go to the polls. And lastly, New Year, that's to the extreme right corner above the nameplate. New Year, Sanwo-Olu approves release of 104 inmates. That we also had something like that recorded in Kaduna, with governors exercising their constitutional rights, releasing inmates in line with the New Year celebration. Let's leave it there now for the Nigerian News Direct.
Check out the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. It's a for or against, you might find. Guardian newspaper: APC, PDP denounce OBJ's letter endorsing Obi. Check the riders. As letter says, LP candidate has edge over Tinubu article. Others: APC, PCC, PTs Obi over, quote, worthless ratification. OBJ can't win polling unit ward in Abeokuta for Obi. Former president merely expressing personal opinion, says PDP. Of course it's a personal opinion. Well, the story is on the front page, continues on page 6 of the paper this morning. Right under the head, the major, beg your pardon, the nameplate, New Year messages. Nigerians too sophisticated to be tricked with religion, says Akeredolu. Serap sues Wike, Okowa, others over 625 billion naira largesse. Find that story on page 4 of the paper. And Jonathan Lawal, Douglas, others make 100 most reputable Africans list. That story is on page 3. And this is one story that must not die. NBA raises panel over Rahim Buraimo deaths. It must not just go the way of another story. Story is on page 4. Of course, merrymakers you'll find right there on the front page in those pictures. Children celebrating in Lagos, and beach fun seekers at the beach in Elegushi, Lagos as well. All of that's packed on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning.
I wonder if Ayo went for, any of the, visited any of the beaches just to relax and unwind.
I don't remember the last time I was at the beach.
Most of the year, you're here on Sunrise Day.
All of my beach experience died with Bar Beach.
Oh.
Yes.
So sad.
That's sad, really. So I need to sue the Lagos State government for that.
Okay, we'll have that conversation afterwards. Let's flip to the Nigerian Tribune. And there's a potpourri of stories here for you to reflect on. It also leads with the big political story from yesterday, but it is couched differently. Atiku, Tinubu, rubbish OBJ's endorsement of Peter Obi. You'll find that inside page 3. Going above the nameplate, there are quite a number of stories as well. Well, beneath the nameplate, I beg your pardon, I am confident Oyo electorate will vote me. That's ascribed to the governor of Oyo, Makinde. That's a page 24 read on inside Tribune. But the question is, will the presidential election, which is coming on in a matter of weeks, not cause a bandwagon effect over the other elections, especially the governorship elections, particularly if you think about the position of the G5 governors. So I can't stop thinking about it and wondering what will happen. But hey, the governor of Oyo State is confident that he'll be re-elected. I
think at least one governor is speaking and we're hearing him. Maybe a number of other governors are speaking. The only governor that seems to be, or governorship candidate that seems to be a lot more in the news today, maybe from my own, neck of the woods, which is here in Lagos, is the Lagos State governorship candidates, the two leading governorship candidates in Lagos. Others seem generally silent. And take it or leave it, development happens at the states. I often say this, the federal government doesn't have indigents. Federal government has citizens, and citizens are known by their Nigerianness. What makes them Nigerians is where they come from, which state, which local government, which town, which house they come from. So the earlier we as a people begin to recognize how local governance is, the better for us all. Because, we need to have the right captain in charge of the ship. But how about the people? At
every level, by the way.
No, I'm talking about, Shebi is the captain we are talking about. How about the guy in the engine room? What if he decides to vandalize or jeopardize the work of the captain? How about the guys who take care of baggage for the people, the luggage for the people, whatever it is that they call your load on the ship? How about the people taking care of the restaurants on the ship?
Very big questions.
All of those things.
What about owners of petrol stations? What would they do during artificial scarcity?
Well,
what would they hoard?
Those ones are not elective positions. We can understand that.
We're just talking about the attitude generally of
exactly,
people.
which goes back to what you raised about love.
Yeah.
The other time.
Okay, still with Tribune, COVID-19, we're tracking high traffic countries to Nigeria. That's ascribed to the NCDC-DG, and it's a page 25 read. And it's about time, you know, particularly because some Western countries are already raising the alert levels on, you know, traffic on travel into their country, particularly from China, which has witnessed a spike in COVID infections in recent times. So it's about time, you know, that the NCDC perhaps considers sane, such that we don't, you know, leave the comfort levels that we have now, particularly that we're enjoying now in the country as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Well, there are a lot more interesting stories for you from Nigerian Tribune. Let me just give you this one before we exit. G5, anxiety in Rivers, Oyo, Benue, PDP, APC camps. You find that story on pages 4, 5, and 6. Tinubu lied over meeting. APC candidates fight back over deal with PDP governors. Atiku campaign says. Yes, Atiku campaign says, not Bukola. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune. And for the paper review segment this morning, there's so much more that we have for you. And, you know, one of the big topics would be that endorsement. So stay with Sunrise Daily. We'll be right back.
On the last day of 2022 and 5 months to the end of his administration, President Muhammadu Buhari releases the regular New Year message to Nigerians via a statement. He would be the second democratic leader to complete 2 terms in office since 1999, and he hopes that a new leadership will be delivered to Nigerians through a violence-free process in May 2023. According to the statement, the president says, in year 2023, Nigerians go to the polls to exercise the right to vote and elect a new administration. It is an important year for our country to ensure that we have another smooth transition of government to whoever the people have decided upon. We as Nigerians must also take responsibility to ensure we participate in ensuring that the 2023 elections are free and fair by not engaging in anti-state activities and other nefarious acts that may affect the run of the polls. We must also resist every attempt to be used by politicians to create unrest in any form to disrupt the elections. We as government will ensure such activities are met with the full force of the law. The statement further highlights the successes achieved in the fight against insecurity, the reform of the police, especially after the End SARS protest, as well as efforts to create jobs through the Nigerian Startup Bill, which has just been passed by federal lawmakers. Apparently concerned about his legacy as he leaves office, the president believes he did his best for the country. According to him, unquote, I welcome and accept both the accolades and criticisms in equal measure, secure in the conviction that I did my best to serve our dear country, Nigeria, and I pray that the next president will also pick up the baton and continue the race to make Nigeria one of the leading countries of the world by the end of this century, unquote. Nevertheless, the president is not losing sight on the task ahead of him in the next 5 months, especially as it concerns building economic growth through the National Economic Diversification Agenda and the fight against corruption. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And that's precisely what we're looking at this morning, the president's speech. Usually on the first of every year, the president will deliver a speech to Nigerians, not just welcoming them into the year, but also, you know, given his own projections, well, maybe a summary of what we did last year or what he did last year, and then what he hopes will happen in the new year. But as you've already heard from this, from the report there, this is the president's valedictory speech, because this is the last he'll be delivering as president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and he also made reference to that. So this morning, we're going to be taking a look at that speech. What does it hold for Nigerians? Is it reassuring enough for us in terms of the elections that are forthcoming and the promises that have been made therein? What do we make of the president's statement where he says he's taking criticisms and accolades in the same measure, knowing that he's done his best? Has his best been good enough for Nigerians? We have with us this morning a development economist joining us to analyze some of the president's words. Dr. Emeka Okegwu is a development economist and a policy analyst. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Pleasure. Good morning.
And a happy new year to you.
Thank you very much.
Does it feel like a new year?
No, it doesn't.
Why?
Nothing is happening.
It does feel like that for me, though.
Well, I wouldn't know. What's your measuring against this new year? Expectations that you woke up on a new day. You've got some resolutions to resolve last year, and you're about to start making new ones going forward. Some of the things you thought would happen happened in the last year. Maybe the president's speech, maybe because we're entering into the last lap of it. It's different, folks. But I mean, for me, it's a normal day.
Is that what happens to you year in, year out, or is this year just different?
This year is a lot different for very many reasons. One of the most enduring is that a lot of people couldn't travel. They didn't have, that reconnect with, especially for those of us from the Southeast. Most of us stayed back here, managed to put in a day, and, all through that period, my mom was very uncomfortable. I was there, leaves, they don't stay, and it was like that all over. So that camaraderie, that connects, that, relink, if you may, it wasn't just there. And Abuja felt like every other day. Streets were full. Hitherto, for those of us who've lived there for some while, you could actually bring out the footballs onto the major, streets and highways, and then you could have a soccer match for 90 minutes. That didn't happen. Everybody was up and about. Okay, but again, well, it's a good year. We thank God we're alive. It was my birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank
Those
you
of you who celebrate on the
yes,
1st.
Yes. So for me, it's nothing to celebrate really, but we're hopeful.
We're hopeful. So, I mean, looking at the president's speech, I mean, he starts with, acknowledging the fact that this is his final speech as president. And he also goes into acknowledging the fact that, we lost quite a number of people, the past year. I think a case in point, even though, yes, there are other people who might have lost their lives afterwards, but under very painful circumstances. We saw the killing of Mrs. Bolanle Rahim on Christmas Day. And I think that, for a number of people, that re-emphasized some of the things, some of the angst that a lot of Nigerians had felt. Do you think that from not just from his acknowledgement in the speech, but also some of the things he says have been put in, some of the policies that have now been put in place to address those kinds of killings, to address extrajudicial killings? Do you think that enough has been done to address the annoyance or the disappointment a lot of Nigerians feel, especially with regards to the police and, how they're currently structured?
Unfortunately for me, no. And I tell you why. Because of one word you just used, policy. Okay, what we've done all these years is to roll out policies, but policies don't function in isolation, okay, of programs and actions. All right, so we should have been interrogating those programs and actions. And yes, the president was clear enough to say, we admit we couldn't have done it all well, but I mean, he was also insistent that from his own perspective and point of view, from that, situation or position of comfort, that he had done his best. And I mean, for me, that best could have been where we would have interrogated the policy and left it at there. But moving forward, then the best is not enough when you don't juxtapose your best with programs and actions that can now give impetus to your policies. So that policy at its best could be seen as a presidential declaration, okay, to say this is what I want. Okay, now it's for us to be able to say what the president wanted, actually happened. He wanted a peaceful Nigeria, just like he wants peaceful elections. That's for me, a declaration, if you may, a presidential declaration. But for us to be able to have peaceful elections, INEC has to do more than it's doing right now. And this is where that program and action component of the policy comes into being. I've not seen a lot of that. I haven't seen it in our security architecture, yes, but like they'll say, what we're seeing is the ones they couldn't stop, and there's so much more that are stopping. So they're doing their best. Okay, but can we be able to up our game? Yes, I think so. So in interrogating a presidential policy on security, for instance, we should be looking at our security architecture. Okay, we should be looking at what's available. And if you're talking about what's available for security, security runs basically on 3 instruments or 3 elements. 1, the capacity of the personnel. 2, the equipment available to them. 3, the technology that they use in gathering security information. Have we seen any new cameras around Abuja? Okay, for instance, have we seen any new technologies being introduced? For instance, have we seen any introduction of probably even, labs that can begin to pick, proper data, signatures, fingerprints, et al. These are the kind of things that you can now begin to now interrogate, I try to give you the best. And this is us. Remember again, Mobe, at one time they said, okay, as long as you have a BVN tied to your telephone, your calls can be tracked. Now, these guys who killed this man were calling the family. So how come we couldn't pinpoint place where they were, wherever it was they were making those calls from? Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's just not enough for you to say, I wish everybody would have, okay, I want everybody to vote. Who the Nigerians want to vote? How many people have collected their voters' cards? You still have voters' cards being picked in the streets.
Let me interrogate that a bit more. I'm just going to read a little of what he said. He said, in the aftermath of the NSAS, our administration took heed and instituted the ongoing police reform program based on a new presidential vision for policing in Nigeria. This vision is framed in a clear roadmap that transcends the tenure of this administration and is predicated on 6 principles: building trust and legitimacy, leadership, accountability and oversight, technology and digital media, community policing and crime reduction, officers training and education, funding, officers welfare, wellness and safety. He talks about how the program is very much in its foundational phase, but has recorded noteworthy successes in improving police welfare and their emoluments. He also talks about how they've started training about 500 police cadet officers, and this is going to enable a better training regimen for the 2022 first batch of the 10,000 new cadets, with an additional 10,000 set for 2023. So that police recruitment, adding more to the force, ensuring that there is some more training for those who are added to the force, and then all the other the 6. Let's say, yeah, I'm looking for the right word he used now. The 6 principles upon which they're building this. I don't know. Some people will say that it would take a while for us to begin to actually feel the effect of any policy, no matter how well-intentioned it is.
But did he say 500 or 500,000 or 50,000? Because I thought I heard you say 500.
Yes, 500 was what I read.
Did I also hear you say 10,000? Or did you say
in the first
100?
batch. First batch, 10,000 in 2022, another first batch in 2023.
That is like cooking 2 grains of rice with a 5-liter pot. It will make no impact. Let's talk about community policing. Me and you come from communities. Let's even start from the Abuja community. Let's not go to our local areas. Has there been any improvement? Have you seen any improvement on your community policing, where you live, where you stay? Have there been more patrols? Are there new vehicles? Now, let's look at, I remember the time, I think it was Channels Television that did that Vox Spot on Ikeja police station. Has anybody gone back there? Had there been any new barracks built? Have we shown any new barracks being built? Because you're talking about welfare, and welfare begins with police housing. So you see, sometimes, like I said, you keep talking about the vision. Yes, it's one thing. President Muhammad Buhari means well. There's nobody that can take that away from him. He means well from the depth of his heart. And that's the truth. But meaning well and doing well are two different things, actually two extremes. For you to mean well means that you have a vision. For you to do well means that you have program and action that's supporting this vision. And this is where I think the issues are, really.
Yeah, but some people also say that there are two different things. I mean, the fact that you have taken action, but it's not sufficient.
No, it's not. You have taken action that is not yielding any results. And I mean, the actions you take, and I mean, if are not sufficient, then you've taken no action.
So when you
okay,
look
I'll give you a typical, sorry, ma'am. Yeah. Your son is going to school. You and the father managed to buy one leg of the shoes. Okay, and then you buy out of his shorts and t-shirts. You buy the top and you don't buy the shorts. And then you dress him up in one shoe without the other one. And then he's wearing his top without his trousers. Have you done enough? You have done something. Is he good enough to go to school? Would they let him into school dressed like that? So sometimes it's not enough for you to, there are certain things you do and they must be total. Okay, you need to get it right. If you have a training program for police people, the first and foremost, you need to equip your police colleges. To what extent have we equipped these training institutes? To what extent have we been able to build the capacities of those who can even transfer these skills to these people? To what extent have you been able to place the technologies that you're going to be training them against? So these are the issues, really. It's not enough for you to say, okay, I've trained 500. If you have trained 500 policemen as your special force, to deal with some certain aspect of the economy, great. But not when you start of a force of about 400 and something thousand people, and you say you're starting by training 500 as the first batch, 10,000 in second batch, another 10,000 in the third batch. What are you training them on? Do we have a criminal database in Nigeria? Are you aware of any?
Well, I know there's a sex offenders register, but what I would like to look at is also some of the controversies that we have seen in terms of what they call that now, in terms of not just in terms of the impact, but in terms of some of the processes that we have been able we put in place with regards to, or some of the controversies that we've had with regards to community policing. We saw what happened when community policing was something that the federal government was trying to establish, and how there was some pushback of the type of community policing. They're talking about constabulary, and some people thought that they're trying to bring back something that we used to have, but that the states should be able to take ownership of community policing. And we saw how a number of state governors, it was a big controversy. Some were coming up with Ebubeago, some were coming up with Amotekun. I don't quite know what response we saw from the north, even though we saw some attempt at bringing up something. But people thought that, at some level, we should be able to introduce state policing. Do you think that's where the conversation should be going?
I don't even think, state policing is even a little bit far off. You just started right. Community policing. All of us live in communities. And somehow we have this kind of policing or some security of sorts in all our communities. Okay? Where I come from, you need to get to a certain age as a man before you're not allowed to come out at night to come and do some kind of, watch or vigilante. And this had happened over a very long period of time. But the moment we started politicizing this, okay, the whole idea became, oh, we're going to be using this, I guess. It was the politics of the policing of communities that actually created, the challenges. Because for me, security is central. Everything that has gone wrong with this administration or the intentions of this administration has been measured against security. And then when you measure against security, you find out that on all fronts, even where they have done exceedingly well, they seem to be falling flat on their faces. Because what's most important and critical is the security of life and property. Okay, so security is everything. And there's no way you cannot, everybody knows who the community, inhabitants, so the best people to be able to do this policing will be to start from that community development association levels, to be able to get people to now start integrating, this kind of policing endeavors to the formal, security architecture that we have. And this is where we failed it. call it constabulary, call it what. I remember one time in Nigeria where police officers were being posted, I think it was under Babangida or somebody, to their local government to serve. Okay, because they felt it would have more difficult for you to look your brother in the face and ask for bribe or, misapply justice or something. So, but as we are getting bigger in population, bigger in size, and remember that our economy is growing not at the same rate of our population. So these challenges that come with your burgeoning economy that's not, matching your rate of economic development without, present these challenges. We have a very youthful population. A lot of these young people want to impress their girlfriends, want to impress their moms, want to impress their friends, and they get into very, untoward things. Now, way back in our own days, we used to have things we do, bob a job, vacation jobs, et al. That kept everybody busy. All right, but now nothing like that is happening. A lot of these kids are out of school. Now, you don't even have the skill centers functioning that would have engaged these energies. So it's a gamut of a lot of issues. But I think at the heart of it is, call it state police, call it national police, call it whatever police. I think the word in contention here is police. Police meaning, some as in Nigerian police. But policing can be done by people who are non-commissioned officers, just like you have in Lagos State and all over the place. So it is not about you wearing those police uniforms. It's about you understanding that what is critical for you to even, carry out whatever wish. Okay, let me digress. We want to have, President has promised that we're going to be having a free and fair election. How are you going to have that? You can only ensure or guarantee free and fair elections where there's adequate security. Mm-hmm. That's very critical.
The president is aware of that.
So how is he going to get it done? Are we employing new police officers? Are we building new police stations? Are we buying new police vehicles? Are we mounting new security surveillance instruments? So it just retains at that wish list level if you are not looking at it from this perspective that I'm seeing it now.
Mm. Well, I do know that, he talked about how the security agencies are primed to meet anybody who tries to disrupt the polls in any way, with some amounts of force. I'm looking for that particular, trying to quickly scam.
No, me and you can talk about priming. Both of us are primed to speak to Nigerians today. We are speaking to Nigerians because we are primed to speak to them. You know why? We are wired with microphones. We are seated in a place where there's no noise. This place is primed for this interview. Mm. The equipment, the background, the ambience, the environment is primed for us, for everybody to hear us. And then you have your transmitters that make certain that whatever me and you are said are sent out there. Mm. Tell me the priming we've done to our security agencies.
But can we take away, when he also makes reference to, as our security agencies continue to make the country proud, especially in areas, I mean, we cannot deny that there has been some gains, for instance, say in the Northeast,
a lot of it,
where Boko Haram, was terrorizing the country and also trying to take territory. We cannot deny that there's been some progress there. I do know how you might feel about not being able to go home, this season and the insecurity that is prevalent, and that feeling, because sometimes it might not really be, it's how we feel. If we do not feel safe, we don't feel safe. No, but in terms of, the Northeast and what we used to hear of it and what we used to know of it, we surely cannot take away the fact that there's been some remarkable gains there.
Like I said, President Muhammad Buhari has done extremely well. You can't take that away from him against what it is that he's done. Okay, but like I said, he means well. My wife is from the Northeast, so I know. But remember that in the Northeast too, you also had citizens participating. At one time, they also created what they call the JTF.
The civilian JTF, yes.
Okay, so the civilian JTF now working in partnership, and this is what you call the local policing. You were talking about it not being in the North. It's more prevalent even in the North than it is in the South. And the cooperation of the civilian JTF and the military and the other security forces actually helped in stemming this tide. Okay, now remember again that at one time, Boko Haram had actually gone beyond the Boko Haram and gone international. So part of what actually also helped government was the supremacy fight between ISWAP and Boko Haram that led to the ouster, of Shekau, and again the ouster of some commanders of the ISWAP. So it became some kind of a MAD situation, some mutual assured destruction thing that helped. Now, I'm not trying to take away the fact that the security agencies of Nigeria are up to their game. I mean, Imo State, Abia State, in the past 1 or 2 weeks, a lot of arrests have been made. Anybody who says they haven't done well will not even be fair to God and be fair to the men who are out there putting their lives on the line for all of us to be able to sleep better. They are doing their best. But I'm trying to say to you, their best is not enough guarantee to say, oh, we're going to be having a free, fair, safe elections where everybody is guaranteed their safeties. The same pronouncements, the same assurances were made before the last elections. You saw people being slaughtered. You saw cats being carried. Okay, you saw people, doing very terrible things. You saw criminals, driving in and out of a polling booth. Now, those guys couldn't be stopped because you didn't have the architecture to be able to trail them, to trace them, to track them. This is the point I'm trying to make. So it's not enough for you to say, okay, fine, yes. Every security agent, I've been in one of those situations where we ran into, some ambush. And I had a policeman in front of my car. And surprisingly, he said to me, sir, we're going to shoot us. I said, go ahead. And that guy kept shooting. And after that shooting, he stopped. And the other cars started following us behind. I had written a letter to the IG then to say, please, that was a police constable. The bravery he showed, but nobody travels to policemen to the eastern part of Nigeria anymore because you are putting that policeman at risk and putting yourself at more risk too because they're going to be killing them. Do you understand what I'm saying? But if we had an effective data collection program, and this is the point I'm trying to make, yes, the president has done well. Yes, there's been some level of, success and here the pushback and all that. But is that enough to guarantee a safe, free, fair elections? No, it is not. Not in the list.
Let's flip this conversation now to my colleagues in Lagos.
Thank you, Mokwe. Let me explore some of the things that you've said this morning. You've said that the president has done well, and you're talking about the architecture that may not have made some of the things that, whatever humongous work the federal government has done to work, show. I'm just wondering where you would place the authorities at the state level on this. You mentioned the fact that there is something states or communities can do by referencing the civilian joint task force forces wherever they had them. And you have also spoken to some pockets of security apparatus of several states, even though they are not quite significant. It wasn't always like this. Back in time, you can, validate this, that back in time, insecurity is nipped in the bud very, very quickly because everyone knew everyone. At what point did we lose that sense of security, especially from the local level? It wasn't always like this.
At the point politics took center stage, okay? At the point politics became very bitter, that was when we lost it. At the point where governors, let me not, the stakeholders or the power blocks at the local levels, started playing God. Okay, at the time, the people's will started getting subverted. The key actors at the state level now started, against people's wishes, pushing down their wishes, pushing down their thoughts, pushing down their people on people. And then you saw families being broken. At the point where politics became the only means of survival, I mean, there were no jobs, everybody was involved in politics. So the struggle for power became more fierce and more cohesive. That was when we lost it. Okay, because right now the only industry that seems to be functioning, as it were, is politics. This is where you can go into as a nobody in parentheses, and then 2 days later you're a millionaire in every currency known to man. It was at that point, okay, and that was the point that people lost empathy, you know, people lost pity, everything became, I mean, okay, and again, let me even put it in, because he also contributed. We didn't have any social, you know, security systems, no social services, no social protection, okay? And so everybody it became the wide west. It became a jungle. It became, you know, the struggle for the fittest. Okay, so we started now expressing what they call the herd immunity. Those who were strong survived, the weaker ones were swallowed. So that was, at that point, I think, in my opinion, that everything went awry.
But then, you know, we always had political jostling from far back as the First Republic. I mean, the fallouts of some of those political jostling, we saw what happened in the Southwest. In the Second Republic, it was the same thing, to the point that the ruling party at the time had the national chairman do some out-of-this-world things, bottling champagne in his name. To the Third Republic, even to this republic. There was something in those republics that I found out, some I barely experienced, which was the local government structure. That there are those who are pointing to the fact that, especially security consultants, saying we lost the first line of security when the local government system collapsed. Do you agree with them?
Completely. I completely and totally agree with them. I completely and totally agree. You know, the moment we lost, you know, that local government as a base, okay, as a foundation of government, we lost everything. I remember that in those days, what you had as local governments, or what you have as local governments today, were actually the provinces. And that's where you had the district officers, and they were the most powerful. Okay, at that local government level, the DOs, the works department, the education department. In fact, way back in those days, you know, if you saw any health inspector come to your house or any education inspector peep through the window to see what your teacher was teaching people in class, the person came from the local government. So the local governments were that powerful. But like I said, again, they had alternatives. They had a lot of alternatives to politics. And it's taken a long time for people to, you know, try to change that opinion. Politics was seen as something that was very coercive, something that was very reprehensible, something that had a lot to do with violence. So a lot of people didn't want to touch it. Okay, a lot of people, they just tell, oh, it's dirty, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, because people had alternatives. But right now, there are no other alternatives. Okay, everybody is getting into politics. People in religion, people in the secular, people in secular leaders are getting into politics because that's the only thing that pays. Okay, because of the attitude we have towards not also, you know, calling people out. People could just get away with blue murder because we are politicians. They could wake the dead, you know, technically or literally because of our politicians. You know, being a politician now started affording you some kind of, you know, near celestial, if you may, you know, protection. Nothing could touch you as long as you belong to the right party and you are, you know. And this is why you saw a lot of, for anybody, any party that was in a government, every other person who was in that party starts jumping ship. And this is where we also started now losing political ideology. Politics became protection. Politics became source. Politics became life. Politics became everything. And against that, you had an economy that was collapsing or that had collapsed. Okay? You had the education system that had collapsed. I mean, you saw a professor being earning 400,000 naira, 200,000 naira against a local government, a PA or something, earning as much more and probably having access to making 10 times over what a university professor would earn. And even at that, he's not being paid the money. So everybody started, you know, pushing and moving towards politics. And of course, the space, the table became smaller, the struggle became, you know, steeper. And then, you know, the outcomes are all for us to see now.
Well, you know, Dr. Okegu, you just touched on our next destination when you noted that the economy is collapsing. Well, not according to Mr. President in this speech. And, you know, I note that he said he talked about the global inflation going up and then the aftershocks of the economy, of COVID-19 rather, affecting the Nigerian economy, but that his administration has introduced buffers for energy prices, you know, to cushion the effect on households. My concern is, how has this impacted, you know, from what you see as his administration winds down, on the purchasing power of Nigerians?
See, you see, energy is something that if you understand the politics and demands of energy, it is something you must have what you call the primary off-takers at the level of production. If you don't have those primary off-takers at the level of production of energy, you are going to be having a lot of problems. In fact, you're going to be paying much more subsidy to be able to get into people's homes than you paid in petroleum. And this is where the link between energy and production comes to the full glare. Now, it is not enough. What you need in your house, the little kilowatt of hours of electricity you need in your house is actually priced, okay, against the kilowatt hours of cost of production. And the cheapest I think you have now will be about 5 cents. So technically, for you to be able to know, what you spend in energy in your house on a daily basis, if you're going to be paying that full value, which is actually where the challenge is now for Nigeria. Because we do not have these productive activities or production facilities that can be able to take these base load costs, okay, at base load. You are being forced to pay that, premium cost for your kilowatt hours of electricity generated. Otherwise, government now begins to generate or pay subsidy for you to be able to get it. But should government pay subsidy for you to watch television? No. Government should pay subsidy for those who are producing, using that energy. And this is where subsidy actually comes in. And each time I have this conversation, I say subsidy is better as a production, instrument. And the moment you do not introduce subsidies at the level of production, it becomes price differential. And then handling it becomes a lot more difficult. So the point I'm trying to make is that we have not looked at our productive capacities. And production is not all about setting up factories. Production is all about looking at your human capital, looking at your raw materials, looking at your technology, okay, and then supporting this with your energy mix. And each time we talk about energy mix, for those of us who live in the tropics, I do not see any efforts that government has made towards moving us to hydrogen self-fuels, which is very available. We are even generating electricity now, from water. South Africa has perfected that technology. You can Google it as we speak here. The hydrogen self-fuels have been introduced. The technologies, even tested, piloted, and they are ready to be commercialized. So it's not enough for you to be looking at your hydros that have a lot of diesel demand, if you may. Okay, so in talking about energy and talking about production, you don't do this piecemeal. That's the point I'm trying to make. You have to build a holistic program that begins to show you first and foremost, like I said to you, your human resources that you must turn into capital. That's very critical. Second will be your natural resources that you now want to turn into products that can become competitive. And then third, your technologies, those you have acquired and those you have developed, that you can now aggregate. The president talked about startups. If I had time to go into interrogating the startups, if you look at the bill of the startups that the president talked about, it's placed in the Ministry of Digital Communication. And you're talking about startups. You should have put it in the Ministry of Science and Technology or put it as a presidential project where every other, resource or research institute comes under that startup. But by now getting a commission, because they're going to be getting a commission for startups, now what are you starting up? Are you going to be aggregating already developed technologies that or some other agencies have the legal rights to hold? Now, what's the synergy between those who are developing these technologies with the startups? Now, where are the institutions? What role do our education institutions play in that startup? The bill doesn't talk about it. Now, where are going to be the centers of excellence that you're going to be training these young people, for these their startups? So you see, again, good presidential wish list, good presidential declaration, but when you now add the program and action elements to it, you begin to see the red lines, you begin to see the fault lines.
Well, you already said that we're primed to have a conversation here this morning and primed to talk to Nigerians. While we're also critiquing the president's speech, I'm sure that you'll have certainly something to say to Nigerians, especially as we go into 2023? I know you already said that you don't really feel that this is it's just another day. But, I mean, we're really in a new year. This is 2023. You must have your own hopes and expectations.
I do, but
what would you like to say to them?
No, what I want is for us to be able to make a proper demand. Nigerians should be able to interrogate. Okay, the president has come out to say, I've done my best. Okay? Is it good enough? Yes, it might to some people. No, it might not to some other people. But it doesn't negate the fact that there are demands that we need to make out of the president. When the president says, I'm going to assure that you have a free and fair election, we should ask the president, how do you want for this to happen? INEC, which you have ensured, INEC is an independent body. The president has no rights to control INEC. That's the truth. So it is not the president that we should be calling out. Okay, we should be asking the president to call out INEC. Because INEC is an independent body. INEC can decide, okay, the president has said we want a free and fair election. But INEC is not helping matters. Because how many Nigerians, the first question I'll ask, and the first demand I will make, is out of these millions of people that registered in the past 2, 3, 4, 5 months, okay, how many of them have gotten their PVCs?
Have you been able to get yours?
Yeah, I've always had mine. I mean, I can show. I've always had mine.
Have you had people who have challenges?
Oh yes, everybody does. At one time, I put a caveat in my house. My kids are grown. I said, no PVC, no deal. Okay, you pay to register, you pay to collect, and you see the funny thing about this PVC collection team, but it's like the PVC is like your bank card. Your names are there when you're filling, your numbers are there, your emails are there. Why wouldn't INEC, just get a logistics company? Okay, get places you can be able to place these cards and send people mails based on the numbers that they use in filling their data forms to say your card is here, ready, call this number, somebody calls. Now, if the president does only that, he would have made my new year. Second, we're talking about now going into the elections proper, because all we should be talking about from now up to the next 50-something days is election and how we're going to be ensuring that Nigerians' will is respected. If the president says, I'm going to stop politicians, okay, from making certain that they don't subvert the popular will of the people, has he set up any special courts? Okay, that now says the moment you do X against A, against what is the demand of Electoral Act, we are going to be turning you in. That would also, be some other wish list. This is the kind of things we need to now talk about going forward. 3, we are talking about electronics, being technology, being the basis. Have we tested these beavers to make certain that do we have any backups? Because for me, 2023 is all about elections, and everything that we're going to be asking from this government is not about what is passed. It has to be about making certain that we'll have credible elections, come March.
So we should make demands of the president. Well, we have to thank you very much for your time this morning. Dr. Emeka Okegwu is a development economist and also a policy analyst. And once more, a happy new year to you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure and honor to be here.
those, statements made by those credible Nigerians that you've seen, on whose side do you belong? Whose position holds the strongest for you? And there are those who are asking the question, what is the significance or the political quota of former President Obasanjo's endorsement of the Labour Party's presidential candidate? Joining us this morning is Dr. Eunice Atanko, who is Chief Spokesperson for Lagos Labour Party Presidential Campaign Council. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hopefully other people will join us. But for now, as my colleague asked before we came on air, what's that question that you asked him again?
I asked a number of questions. There
must be Bugain. Is that what you
right now, yes, the Labour Party. It must be in celebratory mood.
Yeah, we are, actually. But before I really give my thoughts to the letter, I just want to use this opportunity to wish Nigerians a happy new year. And I tagged it actually as saying why we are fighting hard for the soul of Nigeria, for a better and an egalitarian society. I wish to use this opportunity to wish them an obediently and a useful 2023 with a lot of challenges, which is captured by the letter of former President Olusegun Okikiola Matthew Ogumboye Aremu Obasanjo. Now, what really caught my attention as regard to the letter was, let me just digress and say, I want to deal with that letter in three aspects. One, the issue of where we are at the moment, and then the warning that was within that letter, and the solution in which he preferred. One, the attention that really got me going was on the fact that the letter was addressed directly to the Nigerian people, but specifically to the Nigerian youth. For a very long time, the Nigerian youth have been neglected, and nobody is actually looking at their own. But here, we have now seen the force and the determination of the Nigerian youth. And then he went ahead and said in paragraph 2, he said, the 7.5 years has been challenging and eventful, with the fact that we have moved from fry pan to fire. And at the same time, he said, from the top to now the lowest part of the valley. And most interestingly, he also said that he noticed that most of the candidates are trying to bring us to some of the things that he has done as a president. And then they are using the indices of saying they are bringing him back to 1999 to 2007 when he started. But he's also referring that the problem is more than that, because at the time he was in office, he was brought in to solve a problem. So we need to do something more dynamic. Now, the warning here is this. The danger of losing this country to that particular challenges of 1999 and to present day situation. But one interesting part of it in providing his own solution, he looked at the area of what he called TVCP.
Track record of vision,
exactly,
and ability to perform.
Exactly.
But can you rule that out, of the other candidates to possess, for them to be able to also deliver? They're equally competent.
Yes, no. And now he questioned the issue of competency as a word in which you use in trying to allude to a kind of capacity of person to. He mentioned it very clearly. So he questioned the issue of competency, because some will use it as a kind of some of the things that they have been able to do which have not produced results. But now, looking at that particular 4-dimension and factor that he mentioned, the track record is something that you must have, even when you allude to the fact that some of them may have. What are their track record? In our own case, we have a presidential candidate. I mean, how can you imagine that you become an IDP in your own country?
Well, I know that everyone would want to speak about that one, but I think a number of people may also want to join in on this conversation this morning. Anthony Hilebo is also joining in this conversation. He is a member of the Strategic Communication Directorate of the People's Democratic Party's presidential campaign. Thanks for joining us this morning, Mr. Hilebo.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, most certainly, it would seem like, as far as the former President Obasanjo is concerned, even his political alma mater, the PDP, doesn't have the kind of candidate that should take Nigeria to Uhuru?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And first of all, before I go on, I must wish Nigerians a very happy new year. And here's wishing for the best to happen to Nigeria, not the worst. The worst being what former President Olusegun Obasanjo described in his commentary. But I'll be quick to say and admit that I'm a personal friend of General Obasanjo. I'm a fan. I admire him a lot. But I'm also a very pragmatic fan. I'm objective. I know where he has made some calls that didn't pattern out well for Nigerians, particularly in 2014. We remember that he wrote these letters against then President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, and he's now complaining 7.5 years later that we are going from frying pan to fry. I would suggest that someone that put us in the frying pan will sit this one out and allow the Nigerians to make a choice instead of foisting a subjective opinion on Nigerians. I would like for him to have been an elder statesman, and he's talking about experience and capacity. And I read the letter where he said the situation and the scenarios are quite different. I beg to disagree respectfully with the general. I beg to respectfully disagree because when you look at 1999 to 2007, the scenarios are similar. And when you want to deal with an issue such as the Nigerian malady that we face today, you must bring in experience, you must bring in capacity. President Obasanjo has, in time past, and possibly aired on this same channel's television, praised Atiku Abubakar for handling the economy while he was going around the world trying to repair the image of Nigeria. There's a recent article on the 1st of January in This Day newspaper where Atiku explains how they ran government and how he was able to bring in experts like Bode Augusto, who he got to run on the government based on his affinity for Nigeria, his love for the country, and without even commensurate pay. He agreed to work for the government of Obasanjo. Same thing with people like Soludo, the eggheads that we had in the Obasanjo government. And this was after an intense 9-month period of developing an economic blueprint. Now, you wouldn't say Nigeria is in that same situation and you don't want to use it. Maybe for some reason, I've had extensive conversations with the general. And for me, I think his heart is in a good place. He has the best interest of Nigeria at heart. But sometimes, some decisions he has made or on who to support have been driven, especially when you even consider...
Just 1 second. Just 1 second. Just before we take a break. But it's not the first time, for instance, that he's saying that your principal, your candidate, as far as he's concerned, he's never going to support him for president. So one would say that he's been consistent as far as that one is concerned, wouldn't you say?
Well, when you talk about consistency, in 2019, he supported our candidate, His Excellency, his former Vice President, Atiku Abubakar. He supported him fully. But I'll tell you a backstory that people hardly know. People don't even know that he was the one that recommended his present candidate of choice to Atiku Abubakar as a condition for supporting him in 2019. That was the plan. That was have these two people run on a platform so that you can mentor him. And by the time he comes of age,
we'll allow, just 1 second, we'll allow Mr. former President Obasanjo to come and say whether what he said and what he means are two different things when you made that comment. But let me quickly bring in Mr. Bamigbeton, his spokesperson, the Tinubu Shetima Presidential Campaign Council. Thanks for joining us this morning. Well, you heard you read in that release, the letter to Nigerians by former President Obasanjo, that every one of the candidates vying for office of the president, they claim to be his mentee, and he wouldn't argue with that, but that he prefers the candidate of the party over and above any other, including your principal. What's your take?
Well, you know, of course, that it would be wrong for him to claim that Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu is one of his mentees. No, that will not be correct, because what has happened in Nigerian history from 1999 to 2007 was not a relationship between a lord and a mentee. It was a case of two people testing the federal principle between themselves. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu was governor of Lagos State, and he went to court against Obasanjo's government on many infractions of the federal government against the state. That is not a relationship of mentorship or whatever. And for us, Obasanjo's values from day one was that of a dictator, who tried to muzzle himself in, who tried to undermine the power of the state, who tried to undermine federalism in the country. So that's not the relationship of a mentor and a mentee. That's number one. Number two, basically, is that the former president of Federal Republic of Nigeria certainly has a role to play in exercising his fundamental human rights to take a position. But we always knew since March, even long before that, that he had his eyes and was the chief strategist of the Obi campaign. So we are not at all shocked at all or surprised by this New Year message. We knew it was going to come, and we were fully prepared for it. And we are saying that any self-respecting presidential candidate who has read what President Obasanjo wrote should not even be proud to step further into this game. For someone to be telling you that you must have a threat, you are a needle who must have a threat. You are somebody who was going to be who will be pulling your hairs. I mean, those are very deprecating way for somebody who wants to be who wants to put the president in place. That's an errand boy presidency that he's trying to create, and we know that has been his history, trying to impose, trying to hoist, trying to manipulate, and we are sure that he has seen the handwriting on the wall, in the past about his capacity to convert these words into action. We know that he will not win even his polling booth in Ogun State. Yeah. So we are not bothered about some of these things.
And Mr. Bangbeton, that's where I'd like to come in. You say he's not going to win a polling booth in his own home state, and that's the reason this support has no electoral value whatsoever. But if it does not, why did your candidates go visiting him at the time of campaign, seeking his support for presidency? And at that time, many Nigerians were surprised that former President Obasanjo and your candidates can be seen in the same room in the first place, going by their relationship in 2007.
That is what you call diplomacy with elder statesmen. It's a normal diplomatic move that will show that you are not how to fight anybody. But it does not mean that you do not know the capacity of the person you are going to visit. You understand?
But why can't that diplomacy color the language in response to this open declaration of his support for the candidate of the Labour Party?
That's what we are saying, that he has a fundamental human right to choose whoever he wants to support. We cannot disagree with him on that, But we can also tell you that as politicians who are grassroots, who have been in this field for some time, we also know the capacity of everybody. And we are saying that this tendency, this announcement of a judge, of a verdict, is totally not correct, because it is deceptive. Because you have been a chief strategist of this person for over 2 years. We always knew that.
No, the point is, Mr. Bangbeton, the point is declaring his support of having no electoral value is not diplomacy.
That's your opinion. I don't agree with you. I do not agree with you. I'm talking facts, as demonstrated. Even when he contested in 1999, he didn't have the support of his base. And you know that tendentiously, APC has always won that state, essentially, over time, So what I'm just saying is basically is that we recognize the right of former President Olusegun Obasanjo to choose the candidates he wants to support. But we are also saying that much of what is said on that occasion, if you look at it very, very well, they don't even give, Mr. Peter Obi any modicum of respect. The manner in which he described Mr. Peter Obi, if you were in his shoes, would not be something that you could take to the bank. We don't even think that was fair to the man. But we also know that some of the comments that he made, about insecurity, the highest law officer of the Federation Balagi died in the government is served. He has not done anything to reverse that or to even exploit or to even investigate it. He has not shown any interest in pursuing the case. So many cases like that. So if
all
you
right,
don't think he's the right
Mr.
person,
Bang, we must take a break now. The jury is out on, whether that open declaration for the candidate of the Labour Party confers respect on him or not. We must take a break now, and we'll return to continue this conversation. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're still x-raying former President Olusegun Obasanjo's letter to Nigerians declaring support for the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. And we have with us Mr. Kehinde Bangbeton representing the APC, and also we have Mr. Yunusa Tanku here in the Lagos studio. We also have Mr. Ehilebo of the PDP who joined us via Zoom. Mr. Yunusa, I imagine you would want to respond to some of the views expressed by Mr. Bangbeton on the declaration of former president's support for your candidate.
The position of former president is very, very clear. Being a leader who has presided over this country, he has an ample opportunity to know virtually almost everybody who has been with him one way or the other. Even at a distance, he can easily measure you with your capacity and your strength and what you have done over the years. And he mentioned it very, very clear, which he alluded to that particular position of his as regard to the track record and vision, character, and then the issue of physical attribute. Now, when he mentioned those particular attributes, he scaled all of the candidates, and he looked at them. Who has one of the most track record? He looked at the track record of Peter Obi and the rest of the candidates. And you all have it on the air. It's in the public domain. As regards to some of the track record of these past leaders who have, some of them been engaged in either some of drug or corruption, as the case may be. Now, he looked at the track record of Obi, which has in Anambra State, in a micro situation, in terms of security, he scored high. In terms of infrastructure, he scored high. In terms of accountability, he scored high. In terms of compassion to the people, he scored high. From his own assessment as a former leader, which he used as a yardstick. Now, when you talk about the issue of character, a man is very open. And in fact, there is this particular comical statement vision you will see. They use all the microscope trying to look for any issue about Obi. They couldn't find anything. Rather, what they find is that the man has been able to leave money, 75 billion naira, in the coffers of Anambra, and it was confirmed by the succeeding governor, who said he used that particular money to build the airport. So there was no ambiguity in that. And with regard to the issue of vision, the man has looked at Peter Obi and said the man having vision in trying to take us out of the wood, based on the fact that he's talking about from consumption to production, which we lack, because most of the situation we find ourselves is that Nigeria is just heavily dependent on what he can bring into the country. But we're thinking about something that we can. He looked at the area land of Nigeria in the part of this country and said, look, let's turn every 774 local government into a production center. This will give employment, it gives room for security. It makes sure that everybody is economically empowered. This is what we need, and give opportunity for employment. When you talk about physical attribute, the man is 61 years old compared to people who are doctored age of 70 to 80. We just moved out of the issue of the Yaradua. May his soul rest in peace.
How do you know their ages were doctored?
Well, it's public domain. I didn't say it because most of the things that they gave to alluded to their age. We are confirming the issue of even the court case in the United States, where an age position of a candidate signified at that time, and then we have issue when you talk about your own daughter and your own self having almost at par age. So these are public domain.
Are you saying then that the statement he made at Chatham House in London, where he gave his own date of birth, are you saying it's untrue?
The question I want to answer, did he actually give the date? He didn't.
Oh, really?
He didn't. He didn't. He was asked the question. He didn't.
You may want to go and watch that video again, because he gave a specific date.
He gave a specific
of
date.
His own birth. So if you find that to be correct, would you then say that he's
these are records that are in public domain. Even when you mention your age, when you do an investigation, you can easily find that there are variants in terms of age.
Okay. Well, Mr. Ehilero, you've been on this conversation for a little bit. So one is wondering, how should the Nigerian listening and watching now, going by some of the things that you've heard Dr. Tanko say, and the things contained, the facts contained in the open letter to Nigerians by former President Obasanjo, what should they be looking at as an alternative view from what former President Obasanjo said?
So first of all, I'm going to query some of the decisions my big oga, my father, Obasanjo, has made, particularly with his nomination of the DG to the Peter Obi campaign, and how much he didn't do his homework, knowing that Doyin Okupe was under trial and may likely be convicted. That was a huge embarrassment for the Obi campaign and showed lack of critical thinking and research in terms of doing the background checks that needed to be done. Of course, he had this knowledge. So that choice just showed that, as well as the choice he's making now, is not a choice that Nigerians must look at. And when my brother in the studio tells you consumption to production, you have to look at the individual in particular. Peter Obi is not he's the consumption person. His greatest business is importation. So he's one of the people that imports to Nigeria. He's one of the highest importers to Nigeria. So he's a consumption person. He's not a production person, like my principal, His Excellency Atiku Abubakar, who is a core production person in Faro, Prime Industries. These are companies that produce here in Nigeria and export, if possible. Not people who import to us and come and tell us consumption to production. That for me is a misnomer and a misapplication of principles. Well, let's go back to particularly, I won't throw diatribes at the eminent personality of former President Obasanjo. However, I have a strong, very strong opposition to anybody who would seem to want to control the president of Nigeria, either by a thread or a needle or by pulling his ears. We want an independent president. We want a president that can take decisions and own his time in government. Not someone, I mean, that particular part of that letter threw me off. It didn't sound like I mean, again, it's kind of reminds us of what happened prior to 2015, the change that he also wrote a letter to instigate Nigerians to change Jonathan because he felt he was no longer in control of Jonathan. And then he went against his preferred candidate that he brought upon the evil, the woe that he has brought upon Nigeria. I'm quite glad that he took his time to elucidate very well on the APC candidate and why Emilokon is not just what Nigeria needs right now. But we must remember that this is the same person that put us in this position. This is what I hold him accountable for. I asked my father, I'll tell him, look, you put us in this position in 2000, but why now should we listen to you again?
Okay.
Why now should we listen to you again?
Okay. We're winding down, Mr. Hilabod. Let me take the opinion of Mr. Bangbeton. You heard some of the comments made by Dr. Tanko, especially about, the statements, from former President Obasanjo, particularly speaking to what he called TVCP, track record, vision, character, and physical and mental capability. And of course, there are many who cut out short clips, videos from the campaign of your principal, questioning whether or not he has the physical soundness that is required to lead Nigeria. How do you respond, particularly in the light of the speech by former President Obasanjo?
Well, in the first place, our candidate, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has demonstrated viability, and vibrancy. He has moved across the country from one place to the other, holding rallies, and explaining the manifesto of our party to the Nigerian people. That in itself shows somebody who has a lot of physical fitness to go through the rigor of running the presidency. And we will always insist that the role that President Olusegun Obasanjo is trying to play is basically to impose an option on Nigerian people. And our own position basically is that as Democrats, as grassroots politicians who have served the Nigerian people and who rely on our track record in service as the major basis for recommending us to proceed to the presidency, we know that Nigerian people will be on our side and we will defeat the retired general who is trying to determine the fate of Nigerians forever.
Okay, let's wind down with this question for each one of you, gentlemen. of what electoral value is the endorsement of former President Obasanjo or any opinion leader at that? I'll start with you, Mr. Bangbeton.
He has the import of this basically is that it should have no electoral value. We know the capacity, we know the source, we know that this is the project he has been working on for like 2-3 years, and we know it was going to blow up in the space.
Okay.
We know that.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Hilebo, your take on that question.
It's interesting that you're asking the electoral value of someone who's just got one vote and whose opinion is not going to be heard in my village in Igwebe and Igbiki Ward 1. Nobody is going to know what Obasanjo says or what he has said, and it's not going to sway any votes. He is an opinion leader. He's entitled to his opinion. Is respected. But then the pragmatic choice for Nigerians will be who can get us out of this position, who has done it before. And he referred to that in his letter.
Okay, yes, all right. We're winding down, Mr. Hilebo. I think we hear you. We hear you loud and clear.
Nigerians that the experience is enough and can take them to the promised land.
All right, thank you. Well, Dr. Tanko.
How can you explain the fact that if he doesn't have an electoral value, everybody's rushing to see him? You cannot, there's no correlation. The fact that is that he's a former head of state. In fact, I want to use this opportunity to use him as a point of contact to all of our statements. Nigeria is in a dire need of solution, and he has profound one. And then he should call on all of his colleagues, all of them, to join hands with him so that they can tell these other people that, look, Nigeria needs a more stronger and viable and capable leader in Peter Gregory Obi and Deti Baba Ahmed. And with regard to the issue of production to consumption, let me clearly say, would you have preferred a tax collector to somebody who has invested? Okay. This is somebody who have learned
I guess we'll have to wait and see, gentlemen.
You cannot compare them together.
We have to thank you very much for being here this morning. Dr. Eunice Tanko is the chief spokesperson for the Labour Party Presidential Campaign Council, as well as Anthony Hilebo, who is a member Strategic Communication Directorate, PDP Presidential Campaign, as well as Kehinde Bangbeton, spokesperson, Tinubu Shatima Presidential Campaign Council. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of our conversation this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, and God bless Nigeria.
Yes. And on that, we have to say once more, Happy New Year. We hope for the best for this nation. So help us all, God. I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a wonderful day.
Yes, indeed. As Marquez said, we hope our prayer points for this year will change with prayers from past years answered. But let's keep praying. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.
And a Happy New Year to you once again. Thank you. I'm Maokwe Ogunyusuf. Have a great week.